Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadali Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. So again, welcome to all of you, and thanks so much for being part of ISTAGOSTHI, which, as we like to describe every day, every time we meet, we try to remind each other of the sacredness of what's taking place at this precise moment. Because sometimes, as distracted souls that most of us are on some level or another, we are very, so to say, expert in desacralizing reality, so to say, of losing sight of the holiness, wholeness, sacredness of everything and moment. So many times it's important that before entering into sacred space, sacred time, which always it's there, but somehow or other we need to become officially aware of that. So a moment like ISTAGOSTHI, or a moment like we were talking yesterday with a friend of mine, before entering kirtan, or before entering again the sacred fire, the sacred space of sharing our hearts with each other, revealing our mind, attempting to invoke the presence of God in our midst. Many times we need to preface that entrance. Before entering officially that space, we may need a loving reminder with each other about what we are supposed to do, what we are about to do. So we keep the sacred perspective in mind. So even a moment like this, which externally may seem, okay, a bunch of guys connecting on Zoom once a week can actually acquire its proper position, and we can reclaim the sacredness of everything. So ISTAGOSTHI is not an exception to that. In fact, for me at least, meetings like this once a week are very condensed, powerful reminders of how we are supposed to continue living the rest of our week, so to say, by getting together, by sharing vulnerably, honestly, our inquiries, our concerns, our whatever, our longings, our doubts, and being open to be received also, feeling hopefully that we are already received, that there is place for us, there is place for our situation, whatever that may be, and from that place of belonging, having the courage of being ourselves, and knowing that we can be ourselves, and that's the only way we can be in connection to the divine and in connection to other kindred spirits with whom we tread this path. So that's actually at least the intention of this type of spaces that we are trying to facilitate in Tadatmya Sangha, in our devotional alliance, trying to create this sacred space, trying to hold sacred space, sacred time. So of course, all of you are instrumental in this happening. So deep gratitude, and thank you so much for being there. And for whatever questions you may have. These days I'm studying the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam along with other books. But something that is very interesting for me is that in every, and I mentioned that, but I will keep mentioning because it keeps happening, coming in the pages, that every time there is some official session of ISTAGOSTHI in the Bhagavatam, of questions and answers, and there are many, Sukadev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, Sutta Goswami, Saunaka Rishi, Maitreya Rishi, and Vidura, and so on and so forth. Generally, at the very beginning, when there is the official inquiry presented by the inquirer, and generally there are many questions, and generally the very first thing that the speaker, or the one who is supposed to reply, says is, first of all, thanking, like expressing gratitude for the questions that have been presented, and expressing depth and even worship for the person who has presented the questions. And generally the expression is, I'm being blessed by me and everyone else, but the speaker also says, everyone else and me are being blessed by the questions that have been just presented. So for me, it's a very interesting, charming, how to say, ethic in how to deal with ISTAGOSTHI. The questions are to be praised and are to bless us, as of course the answers hopefully also create some effect of blessedness. So here we are basically, in other words, ISTAGOSTHI is a meeting in which both of us attempt to bless each other. No, I mean, we both of us attempt to be open, so God, Krishna, the Swift Absolute, is blessing both speaker and inquirer. No, that's basically the spirit of this type of gatherings. So that said, here we are in Ananda Ashram, 1 week already, almost here, a little bit less than that. Last ISTAGOSTHI was from Alacha. So we have been here in North Carolina, Ananda Ashram, for the last 6 days or so. Yesterday, celebrating Bhakti Rasa's birthday. Today also we are celebrating birthday of Sudevi. Maybe she's not able to connect here. She may be celebrating in Mayapur. And also a dear friend of mine and ours, probably Balaram Prabhu from New Zealand. Although for them the birthday was yesterday, because in New Zealand they live in the future in terms of time frame. So I had to greet him yesterday, but I greeted him today again. So he gets 2 birthdays in 1 year. And so beautiful, preparing our consciousness for tomorrow's Ekadasi, which, as we talked a few ISTAGOSTHIs ago, we are trying to craft them as also sacred spaces of necessary disruption of unipolarity, no? Moments in which we can stop how we do things in a usual, predictable way throughout the week and spend some time and craft some sacred space in those 2 special days a month, and trying to enter into the land of this sacred disruption and uncertainty and liminal space, so we can be taken by surprise by Krishna's presence. So yeah, here we are crafting some special ceremony and singing, fire, sacred circle, and so on. And of course, you are all invited to do so as well in your own ways. So that said, I'm not seeing any raised hands, so it's okay. But now I'm seeing one raised hand. That was fast, Karuneshwari. But if you give me permission, Jai Karuneshwari, and I'm seeing 2 raised hands now, all coming there from the UK. So if you give me permission, there is one question that has been sent to me by a new friend of mine from Alachua, Ganashyam Prabhu. And he told me he's not able to connect for family dynamics. And I like to begin with that question, if you allow me, because I think I mean, all of the questions are very interesting, but I think it's a good question to begin. Let's put it that way. And then, of course, we will address whatever questions we may have for those who are connected live. So I've shared the question in the chat, but that was before all of you were connected. So I don't know if you can read it, or you cannot because you were not connected when I shared the question. If not, I will request Bhakti Rasa to copy, paste the question, if that's actually possible. And if not, you are not reading it? No, okay. There I've done it myself. I've pasted it. So I'll read the question, of course, for those who are seeing this via Facebook or who will listen to it later. So Ganashyam Prabhu presents the following question. There are many questions, but in the context of one main related theme. Says, does praying for things or even for people make sense? I understand that Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti. Does he hear or respond to a conditioned soul's prayers? Likewise, it seems Paramatma is the Lord of the Tatastha Jivas. Yet Paramatma also just acts as a witness. So what is the efficacy, if at all, of this kind of praying to pure devotees? Do they hear or respond? So, of course, this is in the context, Ganashyam Prabhu has been recently reading, or is reading, maybe still, my first book, Inherent or Inherited, where I somehow touch upon some points regarding Svarupa-shakti and Bhagavan and Paramatma and so on and so forth. And for me, yeah, this brings in very interesting series of topics that need to be, reconcile all of them, because if not, and I've seen the consequence of that, and I've suffered the consequence of that myself, we may have a few ideas that are not very, encouraging to our faith journey and our relationship with God. Because sometimes we may have heard, okay, Krishna is in the Leela and is all interacting with his Svarupa-shakti. and he's lost in love in the lila, which gives the idea of he's not aware of what's going on with you. Sorry, you are not in the lila. And then on top of that, we have, and Paramatma is kind of an indifferent witness. So that doesn't conclude on a very hopeful note, right? Because, okay, Krishna is lost in Lila, completely unaware of who I am, where I'm going, and so on. And Paramatma is in my heart, but doesn't care, it seems. It seems to be indifferent, passive, just witnessing, and not doing nothing, probably. So that seems even like some type of sadist person that knows what I'm going through, but just witnessing without. So, I mean, that's not the case. But my point is, we may get that picture, and that's not very encouraging, because at the end it's like, so I have no connection with God. He's not listening to me. He doesn't care what to speak of. He loves me, and so on and so forth. So of course, then the questions come: if I'm praying, to whom am I praying? Am I being heard? What to do? And so on and so forth. So a few things need to be clarified in this connection. First, which can be first? Okay, we hear that Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti, and that's true. But what do we mean by that? And of course, it's a long conversation, but basically the idea is the following. Svarupa-shakti is another way of talking about the internal energy of God. It's another way of talking about bhakti, which is described as the essence of the svarupa-shakti. So, and bhakti, according to the opinion of Swami Padmanabha, and in my opinion, according to the opinion of Shastra, bhakti is not inherent in the jiva. So it's not that every jiva has bhakti. Every jiva has the potential for bhakti, that's for sure. But it's not that we have love for God, for example. No. We have that potential for sure. And God has love for us, but that doesn't mean we have love for him. I think that's clear. I mean, he has loved us unconditionally for time without beginning, and we have lived maybe many lives without even considering his existence. So anyhow, that's a separate conversation. But my point is, Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti. And then we hear Paramatma interacts with Tatastha Shakti, Maya Shakti. Now, immediately something needs to be clarified here, at least two things in my mind. One, Krishna and Paramatma are the same person, right? Be careful of creating this dualism. There's one guy called Krishna, there's another guy called Paramatma. They are not two different people. They are the same absolute truth, expressing from different places. And that's what the Bhagavatam say. Advaigyan tattva brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Reality, the ultimate reality is non-dual consciousness. It's non-dual, it's indivisible, inseparable, but it's known and expressed in forms like Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. But we are talking about the same unified whole. So when we say Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti, Paramatma interacts with, we have to be careful not to create like absolute separate categories where Krishna and Paramatma end up being two people. And Krishna looks like insensitive and so on. So the idea here is Krishna and Paramatma are both God. Let's put it like that, in different expressions. So the form of God that relates with those who approach God is Krishna. The face of God that relates to those who do not approach God is Paramatma. In other words, those who do not have bhakti, God is there with them, loving them unconditionally as Paramatma. I'll go there in a minute to actually show that Paramatma is not as indifferent as we may think. And Krishna is that facet of the Absolute that reciprocates with the bhakti of the devotee. It's the same person. Now, the analogy that I gave in my book is that that of the child, in radical personalism. A baby is born, is not aware of his mother, so he's not aware of himself even. Consciousness has not risen to that level. So he doesn't reciprocate, aware of the other person. But the mother still is there, loving him, assisting him. So that's Paramatma. God relating to those who are not aware of him. Jiva Shakti, Maya Shakti. Jiva Shakti in connection with Maya Shakti, not in connection with Swarup-Shakti, with Bhakti. And when the baby grows, in other words, when the soul gets in touch with Bhakti, let's put it like that, the baby starts to reciprocate with the mother, becomes aware and tries to give something in return. And in that moment, the mother's unconditional love was already there, but now takes a new form and shape to reciprocate with the boy. And that's what when we say Paramatma becomes Krishna. So to say, again, language is limited. It's the same person, but now taking a different approach to reciprocate with our approach. So now the question comes from Ganesham Prabhu. He is a devotee. He's a bhakta, which means someone who has bhakti. So for a bhakta, for a devotee who prays to God, Krishna is hearing those prayers. Because as we say, Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti, but every devotee has svarupa-shakti. Therefore, he will personally attend to those prayers. Technically speaking, we could say that for a bhakta, Paramatma is no longer there. Paramatma has been replaced by Krishna, if you want to put it that way. Again, it's the same person. But Paramatma is the witness, and as we will see, it's not only a witness inactive, but someone who loves us unconditionally. And that's all around Shastra, as I tried to show many times. So Krishna is the form of God that appears, so to say, when we voluntarily approach him in a relationship, in bhakti. So in that sense, the devotee doesn't have Paramatma in his heart, the devotee has Krishna in his heart. That's a deity. So in that sense, Krishna is hearing the prayers. Krishna is reciprocating. Once Istade. That's what what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has mentioned at the end of Raghavatma Chandrika. That he says, okay, people say that Krishna is lost in Lila and Paramatma is in the heart. So if a devotee asks, you can say, oh, Paramatma is hearing your prayers. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will say, well, but a devotee won't be satisfied with that, in the sense that a devotee wants to have a loving relationship with Krishna. So if you tell him that just is Paramatma, again, it's the same person, but they want to relate with certain aspect of God. So to say that Paramatma is the one hearing is not satisfying for the devotee. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur then continues unfolding the idea that, yes, Krishna is lost in Lila, in the embrace of his svarupa-shakti, but also he retains his omniscience. He makes that point. His sarvajñata. So that Krishna is lost in Lila doesn't mean that he stopped being omniscient. So his omniscient means he's aware of the prayers of it, not only of the prayers of his devotee, he's aware of everything. What to speak of the prayers of his devotee. So when we say that Krishna becomes lost in Lila, of course, he becomes lost in Lila, but again, there are certain qualities that correspond with his godhood that he retains, although they do not become prominent in the Lila, in the realm of Lila. In the realm of Lila, when Krishna is interacting with his devotees, he's not showing up his omniscience and this and that, but that doesn't mean that that's canceled or that has disappeared. That's still functional and applicable in connection to us or in connection to whomever may not be fully in the Lila. So I know it's difficult maybe to understand because our mind sometimes is very binary and it's more like, okay, is in the Lila, is not in the Lila, Krishna and Paramatma, black and white. But again, we are talking about God. We are talking about infinite, the absolute. So I think it's important to understand all the things. In which sense Krishna only interacts with his svarupa-shakti. That's not elitism. That's not sectarianism. That doesn't imply that devotees are put outside of that equation and therefore they cannot relate to him directly. No, because every devotee has svarupa-shakti, and in connection to those who do not have svarupa-shakti so far, still Krishna is there as Paramatma, and Paramatma is not a passive, inactive witness. Is passive by comparison to Krishna, of course. And again, Krishna is not as passive because he's reciprocating to our approach. So Paramatma is Krishna himself, praying for us, loving us unconditionally, of course, acting as a Chaitya Guru. Again, we hear that Paramatma is Chaitya Guru. So Chaitya Guru is, a guru is not a passive person. No? A guru is not someone who stands next to you without saying anything, just witnessing and in silence. That's not a guru. Of course, if we don't have the ears to listen to the guru may be trying to help us, but we are not listening. So similarly, Paramatma is in the heart with unconditional love, trying to help us, guide us from the inside, but we have to have ears for that. And when we have the ears for that, and we pay attention to that, and we try to surrender to God and his agents, then again, Paramatma takes the form of Krishna to reciprocate with those who reciprocate to him. That's what Krishna says in the Gita. Ye atamam prapadati tam sataiva vajamyaham. 4:11, Krishna is saying, according to how you surrender to me, I reciprocate. Now, sometimes people will take that verses and way to justify it. Krishna doesn't love everyone unconditionally, because he's saying, according to how you surrender to me, I reciprocate. So if you don't surrender to me, if you are indifferent to me, I'm different to you. I'm just reciprocal. But no, that verse, Krishna is saying, prapadyante, gyatamam prapadyante. Prapadyante means surrender. So that verse is exclusively talking about how Krishna reciprocates with those who surrender to him. He's not talking about loving unconditionally those who do not surrender to him. That's a different department, so to say. There he's saying, those who surrender to me, I reciprocate accordingly. So he's always willing and open for that relation, reciprocity. And for those who do not surrender to him, or for whatever reason still are not aware of his existence, loving existence, he remains as a non-invasive, non-coercive, passive, quote unquote, in that sense, loving witness. But in that witnessing, he's loving us unconditionally. He's throwing some breadcrumbs, so to say, but at the same time respecting our individuality. Because if not, if you will say, well, why Krishna doesn't just impose himself on us and force us to love him? Well, because that's not love, basically. Sometimes we may come with this type of question. Well, if Krishna really loves me and he's in my heart and he knows how much I'm suffering, why he just not make all the arrangement for me to love him? And because basically that will imply that you no longer have free will and he's just deciding for you 108%. And that's not what love is about. Love has to remain voluntary. So basically, that will be my reply to Ganashyam. On that basis, we can understand that, yeah, we can pray to Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is declaring Saranagati. Krishna is listening to the prayers of his surrendered devotees. He's saying, no, Nandanandan personally is listening to those prayers. So, and of course we can pray. He's asking, we can pray for devotees. Yeah, we can pray for devotees. I mean, to the devotees, so to say, to great personalities. Again, they also have a suhrit. They have a good heart for us. So anyhow, some thoughts in that connection. I hope that solves or replies on some level to Ganashyam Prabhu's question. I thought it was an important thing to clarify, especially if I personally have written my first book and in my second book things in this connection that if we don't understand them in context may seem like contradictory. Thank you for the question, Ganashyam Prabhu. And let's go to the raised hands now. So first one is Karuneshwari. So please, you can, yes, unmute yourself and bless us with your inquiry.
Very well. Thank you for that really great answer. Really glad to hear that. And I'll go back and listen to the recording again. I've got two kind of philosophical questions, but if it's enough just to answer one, I can ask the other one again next time.
Yeah, let's begin with the first one. If they are not entirely related, maybe first one, and then if we have time, we go to the other one.
Okay, yeah, they're not related.
Okay.
It's not about chanting. We've been discussing like non-dual thinking in our Sangha group. So my question is, like, it was a new concept for me when I started reading about it in your book. And then just recently I was listening to Richard Rohr a few times, and he's saying different things about it. And one of the things he was talking about was how it's not black and white thinking, which reminded me of like the Majjhima Adhikari platform. So my question is it related to the different stages of like Kanishta, Majjhima, Uttama, and is it like an automatic thing, or is it can be there in any stage, or something that always needs to be cultivated no matter what stage you're in?
I'm not so sure if I understood the question in the sense of what is it present in the three stages? Because you were talking about non-dual thinking, so I don't know if you were asking something related to non-dual thinking to the three stages.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, does non-dual thinking like occur automatically as you move into the Majjhima stage, because in that stage you're less likely to think in black and white terms? Or can you cultivate non-dual thinking in any of the stages? And is it something that comes automatically, or you always have to try and cultivate it?
Okay. Yeah, now it's clear. Thank you.
Good.
So, well, to begin with, I'm glad that you're discussing this topic, because I personally feel has been very neglected, not with any bad intention, but just probably because out of, as I mentioned in my book, out of misunderstanding, no, of the thinking like, okay, non-dualism is against Gaudiya Vaishnavism, or it's just mere impersonalism. Well, actually, our tradition and every other Vedantic tradition and every other mystical tradition, for that matter, are non-dual in one way or another. Of course, there are different ways of conceiving non-duality, but all of them present a form of non-dualism that basically implies realities as a whole. I mean, reality as a whole, reality is a whole. Reality is interrelated, interpenetrated, interconnected, inseparable, whole in itself. It's not fragmented, fractured, isolated. They're not different realities. There's one center, one common center, and everything that exists revolves around it. We will say there is Shakti Mamam Shakti, God, the possessor of energy, and all the energies that are connected with him. We cannot just make a separation between. And actually, that's the symptom of the conditioned soul, a sense of separatedness, a perception of reality as isolated things. And that's why we feel isolated many times, why we feel we don't belong, because we lose sight of the non-dual foundation to reality. And as I've tried to mention in Radical Personalism, this is right there in the Bhagavata, and in the one of the most important verses, as I just quoted a few minutes ago, Advaya Gyan Tattva. Bhagavatam says, reality is non-dual consciousness. And at the end, in 12th canto, almost last chapter, is saying, the whole topic of the Bhagavatam is Advitya, is non-dualism. So, and Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and our tradition has that particular version of non-dualism. I like to call it radical personalism. On that foundation of non-duality, we can relate with one another. Actually, we can relate because there is a non-dual foundation, because there is something that we share in common. There is something that we are part of, this non-dual thing, and that makes it possible for us to relate, to have something so profound in common that actually that's what allows for the possibility of real connection, the fact that all of us share this non-dual foundation. So going to your question, in connection to the different stages of the practice of bhakti, of course, as you properly say, there are three stages described in general. Again, to say there are only three stages will be just one of the most absolute understatements in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Every day is a new stage, and every moment and every day, if you will. They are not just three stages, but it's a way of describing them in a general way. Sometimes, I don't know, Carl Jung will speak about the two halves of life. There are ways of framing the journey, but we have to be careful not to be extremely reductionistic and thinking, okay, this, and this. No, so yesterday I was a Kanista, and today I find myself in a Madhyam and something like that. No, there are all these transitional periods also between one thing and the other, and so on and so forth. So to be a Kanishta is, as I put in the introduction to my first book, it has to do with the first naivete. No? Like you are naive. No? And it's okay, there is place for that. We are not condemning being a Kanishta, like a neophyte, novice. You are simple-minded, you not too many complications, just simple and probably black and white. And probably, yeah, there's not much place. I mean, there should, but probably it's not yet the moment to delve in detail into non-dualism, because probably in the beginning you are more of non-dualism is not my tradition, that's another tradition, and my tradition is this, and we create in our minds this separation. Although my point with this is we should teach this from day one, I would say. But that doesn't mean that we are understanding that from day one, right? But at least we should know that that's there in theory. No, we should have it. Okay, I was told this from day one, so maybe I will understand this in 10 years, but I was told that from day one. So in that sense, I have no excuse to justify my fanaticism or dualism because nobody told me about non-dualism. No, we should from day one teach, yeah, reality is non-dual, everything is interconnected, interrelated. I think it's not so difficult to understand at some level. But again, maybe for a Kanishta, that not maybe the main theme, or the grasping of that idea may not be as full. But I will say there's a place for that in every stage. No? Personally, my thoughts will be all these topics that we are sharing can be shared in all stages in general, but they will be understood in different ways in different stages. No? I mean, I can say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in day one as a Kanishta, and that has a meaning, and that's helping me on my journey in a certain way. And if I eventually progress to a more dynamic, nuanced stage like Madhyam Bhakti, the same line will have now a different meaning. Still the same line, but now it's like, wow, I never read this line or this verse in this way. Oh, this verse from the Gita is telling me this, that I learned it by heart 20 years ago, but I could ever thought that actually it was saying this. But that will happen naturally when you expand your consciousness and grow in integrity and wholeness. And the same applies when you're an Uttam Bhakta. But what I will say is that generally the type of, for example, the type of reading of scripture according to these three stages, and I'm talking in general, tend to be different. No, like a Kanishta will read scriptures more literally. No, a Kanishta generally, and there again, I'm generalizing. There are degrees of being a Kanishta, but there will be more literalist. Like the Bhagavad Gita says this, and it's to be taken literally. Now, there's no place for interpretation, nuance, context, poetic devices, certain hyperbole and things like that. It's just what it is. And a Madhyam will take certain scripture in a more interpretative way. So what's the context? What's the point here? What they are trying to say? And how to frame that nowadays in our particular situation and language. And for a Madhya, for an Uttam, scripture will be saying something even beyond that. We'll be talking about things going on in Lila, to give an example, right? Just to give you an example, one of how this one same line can be read in different ways. There's this famous verse in the Gita which says, what is night for the sage is the day for the ignorant person, and what is the day for the sage is the night for the ignorant person, right? We all heard that one. So probably in the first stage, you take that literally. So we will think, okay, when the sage is awakened, the ignorant is sleeping literally, no? And vice versa. Then you understand, okay, it can happen also like that. Generally, the devotee is waking up at Brahma Muhurta and the drunk guy is going to sleep at that time, to give an example. Again, it's a very general way of saying it. But then you understand, no, this actually points, being sleeping and being awake, it doesn't have to be with the physical state of sleepiness and awakeness, but with what I'm aware, what I'm looking for, what I'm distracted from and aware of. That has more to do with that. So a Madhyam reading will take the actual purpose of that example or analogy. And maybe an Uttam will read that verse and will be taken to the Lila. And we'll think like, okay, what is night for everyone in Vrindavan? Everyone in Vrindavan goes to sleep at night, but that's day for Sri Radha and the gopis because they wake up to join Krishna in Rasa Lila. And what's day for everyone in Vrindavan when they wake up for the service of Krishna is the dark night of the soul for Radha and the gopis because they have to be separated from Krishna. So again, that's how through the lens of bhava or divine emotion, an Uttam Bhagavata may read that verse of the Gita, which we will say, but that's not there in the Gita. How can you read that? But it's there if you have the heart and the eyes to see it. No? So I'm just giving these three examples in connection to how generally Kanishta, Madhyam, Uttam may read scripture, may filter, interpret things. So in the same way, related, going back to non-dual thinking, yeah, in the beginning, if you make a literal reading of non-dual thinking, you may reject it because you may feel that's impersonalism, that's Advaita, Vedanta. Non-dual means Advaita, we are not Advaita, out of this. And then if you go to a more Madhyam reading, you understand, no, there's a non-dual foundation to reality. And on the basis of that non-duality, diversity can be expressed and relationality can be expressed. So yes, we are non-dual and we need to keep that in mind so we stop seeing reality as fragmented, isolated portions and so on. And then you ultimately, as on an Uttam level, your idea of oneness and non-duality will be in terms of love, no? Like oneness, love means the two of us become one in a dynamic way. We lose our sense of separate identity, not in an impersonal merging, but in a fusion of love, so to say. No, that's the self-forgetfulness that divine love brings. As Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will say in Prem Samput, he will say, if you say I love you to the other person, that goes against the very nature of love, because still there is I love you. Still there is a sense of two people there, I and you. When there's real love, that's lost, he will say. Like implying there is such a unity, again, not impersonal, but such a fusion that we don't feel we are separated. No, that's another meaning of the word pranaya. Pranaya is a stage of love in which you feel that the beloved's life and body is like one with you. No, it's like you are one. The two of you are one. Again, in the dynamic sense, not in an absolute sense. Like, for example, I don't know. Sometimes the example is given if you are, I don't know, if you are in the bathroom doing things that people do in the bathroom, which generally is not a public arena, but you are by yourself, no? As you should. So, and you are not like ashamed, embarrassed, because it's you, no? But if someone else enters, it's like, oops, no? Because there's this sense of separated, there's someone else here. You follow my point? Someone else. But if you will feel that there is such trust and intimacy and confidence with that person that you are one, you may not feel any disturbance because we are one, basically. Again, it's just an example, but my point is this idea of oneness, how that, or non-duality, how that may be expressed in the highest stages of consciousness. So yeah, but again, going back to that, I will say that just to conclude, I think that it's important to teach, to talk about that on all levels. And according to our openness and adhikar, we'll be able gradually to grasp more and more. Because this is foundational. Again, all this is about setting proper foundations. I remember when I wrote the last part of Radical Personalism, part 3, which has 7 chapters. And I felt all the 7 chapters are actually building a foundation for the whole temple. of love that we want to build in our heart. But first we have to build a foundation. First we have to talk about vulnerability, about individuation, about non-dual thinking, about the sacredness of matter, about coexisting with uncertainty, all the things that if you don't have them properly placed in the foundation, you can even build the whole edifice, but without foundation, in time, it's just a sand castle or something like that. It will collapse. So yeah, thank you for bringing up the topic, and those are some of my thoughts. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that really answers it. I'll leave the other question till next time.
Let's see. I mean, I'm seeing 4 more hands, so we may give some priority to them. But if we still have time, we'll go back to yours, and if not, we
Okay.
start with yours next Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, continue in the UK. Now it's the turn of Jamuna's raised hand. So please, Jamunaji, you
Hi,
can
Krishna Maharaj.
mute
Okay,
yourself.
so the idea is that we're supposed to be working on ourselves, so that we're offering Krishna the best wholeness of ourselves, as you say, holiness of ourselves, and that becomes the offering to Krishna with all of our own individuality, without casting who we are in our best version. So that's on one side. Now, I'm sure there isn't sides here, but this is how it is in my mind right now. So that's one side. So the other side is what I've heard, is that we should make our desires and opinions one with the Guru, which is non-different than Krishna's desires and opinions. So then how to do that, knowing that we have our individuality, our wholeness individuality, and then the desire of the Guru, of Krishna, and their opinions, that they become ours. How to not lose ourselves in that transition. Because, you know, you can have, this might be a little bit of a sidestep, it's kind of like on a lower side of that, where you may have a senior devotee who may not be treating somebody very nice in a public space, but that becomes a sacred thing. It's like, oh, they got the mercy. You got the mercy, Prabhu. Now, it might just be completely, the person just got shamed in public. Congratulations. But that's kind of losing your individuality in an unhealthy way. But you're being told that the opinions and the desires of the Guru is non-different to Krishna. So then where does it become pure? Where does it become healthy? Where's the good transition in that?
Yeah. Thank you. Another important topic that, as I mentioned, as I dedicate the whole chapter to non-duality in the last part of my book, I also dedicate the whole chapter to issues and tissues between Guru and disciple. And when I try to address this, so this and other, especially like not unusual scenarios, but typical scenarios that are not usually addressed, which have to do with clarifications in what do we mean by all the things that you're saying, for example, Jamuna. Because you say, we are told that we should agree with the Guru's desires and opinions, and because they represent Christians and so on. Now, again, we have to go reply to that how. First of all, say, well, what's Guru? And go again to the idea. Every time the scriptures talk about Guru and say you have to surrender to Guru, the scriptures take for granted that the person they are referring to as Guru is acting as such fully and perfectly. You follow? No? Every time the scripture says surrender fully to a Guru, they have in mind a perfect Guru. Like the example I gave in the book is every time an encyclopedia speaks about an apple, actually that example was suggested by Bhakti-Rasa, and I added that in the book, so credit goes to her. Every time an encyclopedia speaks about an apple, it will describe an ideal apple. It won't describe a rotten apple. It will describe the proper apple as we ideally know it. There are rotten apples, but those are not fitting the official description of an apple. So in the same time, when the scriptures speak about guru, unless they clarify that, they are talking about an ideal guru. And on the basis of that idealness, one should surrender to that. Now, the implication is, if that idealness is not being represented by the guru, you should not surrender to that. For me, that's common sense. But again, not so common these days. That's why we call it in the book uncommon common sense. If someone in the garbs of guru, and I'm not saying it's a bad person or anything, but someone may be serving, let's say, in the capacity of guru, and there are different degrees of gurus. I mean, Prabhupada has said even that Kanishta Adhikaris can be gurus. Srila Srila Maharaj, Srila Narayana Maharaj have said Madhyam Adhikaris can be gurus. My point is, these are functions, representative functions, where the person is trying to facilitate God's will and wish to that person, but there are different degrees in which that's happening. That facilitation is taking place. And unfortunately, in some cases, some things, some unresolved, some unredeemed aspects of the individual, of the guru, get in the way of her representation of God's will. And that should be clearly separated, because that's not Krishna's will coming to me. And of course, in the beginning, we may not have that criterion and education. And that's why we have to educate ourselves and take time. And even if that happens, sometimes we may go through the situation. Life happens. I have that experience. No problem. It's part of the lesson, part of the teaching, part of continuing to aim even more accurately, so to say, and continue to learn from whatever has happened. So that's an important point for me. Again, we are told, yeah, you should surrender, align your wish to the guru. Yeah, as long as the guru is representing God. Because I can be serving as a guru, but I can be a mixed bag still. And some other things get in the way. And that maybe is something that I don't need to surrender to. Mm-hmm. And that's on one side. On another side, I will say, because you mentioned desires and opinions. And I will say that this has to be done in a way, as you properly mentioned, that we preserve our individuality and we can progress in our individuation. No? So to identify with the gurus, let's say the guru is a bona fide representative of God, as it should be. And of course, there are many of those personalities. What does it mean to align or identify with his or her desires, opinions? Mm-hmm. Those are more connected in terms of the realm in which the guru is operating in our lives. Again, the guru is a spiritual teacher. So that's her area of expertise, ideally. That's it. I mean, a guru is not there to teach me about politics, about which car should I buy, about how should I paint my house, and things like that. No, I mean, guru is not a romantic counselor. The guru is not my psychologist. We may need assistance in all those realms, but guru is not necessarily there to give that advice. Guru is not expert on anything, on everything. Because I'm clarifying that, because sometimes we have this idea, guru is like, we over absolutize the guru to the point that we can ask him everything and anything, and he is supposed to give revealed answers about which car to buy, which wife to marry, where to spend my next holidays. And that's tricky, because also we become codependent and we start thinking for ourselves, and we just allow other person to tell us what to do, and we are not taking responsibility for our lives. And that seems surrendered outside, externally, but you're just being codependent. And if the guru agrees to play that over-absolutized role, that's equally toxic for him or her. So again, the alignment with desires and opinions regarding the guru has to do more with spiritual matters in connection to Krishna. And that also not on an absolute perspective, absolute aspect. No, let's say that, I don't know, your guru loves to his favorite service is, I don't know, to cook for Krishna. And you feel, that's not my favorite service. I mean, I like to cook. I have nothing against that, but my favorite service is something else. So it's not that I have to force myself to like cooking more and dislike those things. That's not the point with identify with the desires and opinions of your guru. Even your guru may have an opinion on a relative issue, as I mentioned, I don't know, some political stance or whatever, a cultural sensitivity, and you come from another part of the globe, and you may have a different opinion on that relative aspect, and that's okay. There shouldn't be a problem. It's not that I have to think like my guru and everything, and that's a form of impersonalism, just like you are dismissing who you are. You are canceling your potential individuation and just becoming like a copy-paste replica of someone else. And that's not what a guru should be encouraging. That's my point also. A guru should be encouraging individuation. So we align with the guru in terms of, surrender to Krishna, loving God, giving our lives with compassion. But in the context of that general alignment, there is place for our own way to do that, our individuality to flourish and blossom. I mean, try to pay attention to, I don't know, to Prabhupada's life and then to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life. It's not that the two of them did exactly the same thing and Prabhupada copy-pasted his guru in every single way, because that's not what it's about. But at the same time, we can see how much he aligned with his guru's heart and wish and desire. But then he tried to please that, so to say, to fulfill that through his own person and individuality and taste. And then he even was open to be informed by his own disciples about situations of the world and how to do this. I mean, he was not just, I'm the guru, the absolute all-knowing person, nobody can tell me anything and you just follow what I'm telling. No, he was also asking how he was getting familiar with the local dynamics in the West. So he was open to be educated in that regard. There's no need to say, Prabhupada was omniscient and he knew everything in advance, so he just played the lila when he asked advice for someone. Why? Why you are insisting on making guru superhuman, no? And devoid the element of humanity, which has a charm of its own. So that's what I will say in terms of when we hear these ideas of align yourself with the desire, opinion of the guru. First of all, what's guru, as I mentioned, and then in which way to align with those things, as you properly said, in a way that we are not losing ourselves as individuals, but on the contrary, that we can make an offering of our own whole integrated individuality for the pleasure of Guru and Vaishnavas. So I don't know if that makes any sense, Jamuna. Yes? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Okay, we'll go to the next raised hand. It's from, still we are in the UK. So now from Swetadip Radhika. And
Ireland.
Ireland, sorry, I'm such an aparadha. Excuse me for that. Let's see, there are local sensibilities that you have to pay attention to.
Well, I'm not
Not
real
Northern Ireland.
Irish,
Not
so I'm
Northern
not
Ireland.
so offended. Only a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah, this is minor aparadha. I hope I will be able to counteract that one. Yeah.
Pranams, Maharaj. So this is in relation to the first question.
Okay.
So you were saying how for devotees, Paramatma is Krishna because that's the form we are attracted to. I've heard this before, but I've also heard this version that as long as we worship in the mood of awe and reverence, we are actually worshiping Vishnu and Lakshmi, even if we are worshiping Radha-Krishna deities. You know, I mean, I don't have a Shastric reference to it. It is mostly like, you know, read on Facebook or YouTube, something like that. I don't know if there's any truth to it. And also, like, I was thinking, when do we really actually know we are no longer in the mood of awe and reverence? You know, that switch, I'm thinking it's not like just one day switch, you know, it's like a gradual thing too. So
Yeah. Okay, a few words on that. Thank you. Yeah, good question. Actually, of course, as you mentioned, nowadays many times our scriptural evidence come from social media and posts that people do. But in this particular case, what you mentioned is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in one purport to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So is there, just to validate the idea that if you worship Radha and Krishna in awe and reverence, you're actually worshiping Lakshmi Narayan. But again, how we take that? Literally, we take the nuance of that, the intention of that. His point here is, again, Lakshmi Narayan, Radha and Krishna are the same person, don't forget. So, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur even gives more nuance in, again, his Raghavatma Chandrika or Madhurya Kadambini. Now I got, no, Raghavatma Chandrika. Yeah, and also if you worship Radha and Krishna with a considerable admixture of awe and reverence, that can even take you to Dwarka and relate to them as to be one queen there, and so on and so forth. But as you mentioned, the shift from awe and what's awe and reverence, what's raga marga, what's the passionate attachment of the Brajavasis. It's a gradual transition we are going through. So I would say that when Prabhupada say that, in my personal opinion, when he says you are actually worshiping Lakshmi Narayan, he's basically trying to say, don't think that your present approach to Radha and Krishna is the all in all. You are worshiping Radha and Krishna, but if it's still a predominance, of like distance, and it cannot be like that. I mean, it may be like that, it may not be like that. It depends on every case. It's not that necessarily every devotee starts in the same way from the same place. Don't forget that. And also depends of the association we are receiving, and so on and so forth. But in one sense, how to say, there's this, and it's a nuanced discussion, there's this thing of, okay, you start practicing Vaidhi Bhakti and then eventually you practice Raganuga Bhakti. Or there's this sense of, no, you start practicing Raganuga Bhakti from day one, but eventually it becomes more Raganuga Bhakti. And there are different ways to say the same thing. No, I will say that, because this is connected to the conversation, I wouldn't say that, in my opinion, technically speaking, I wouldn't say that we start practicing Vaidhi Bhakti. We start practicing Raganuga Bhakti, but in a very rudimentary way. Because my point is, from day one, we receive the indication, our goal in the Gaudiya Sampradaya in general is Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. Vrindavan, let's put it like this, because some people may have different affinities. Vrindavan. So you can only achieve Braja Bhakti through Raganuga Bhakti. That's clearly mentioned in the scripture. You cannot attain Vrindavan through Vaidhi Bhakti. And from day one, the goal of Vrindavan is presented. So from day one, the goal that corresponds with Raga Bhakti is presented. So from day one, you're practicing Raga Bhakti because you receive the particular goal and the orientation to that goal. Although it's in theory in the beginning and we may not have too much experience, but it's a form of Raga Bhakti. Jiva Goswami calls that in the Bhakti Sandarbha Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Bhakti, which means Raga Bhakti without Ruchi, without that much taste yet. And that's why we will need rules and regulation, but it's still Raga Bhakti. And I will say that when acharyas like Prabhupada or Bhaktivinoda Thakur even, they will speak in terms of first Vaidhi Bhakti. Actually, that Vaidhi Bhakti refers to this Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti that Jiva Goswami is speaking about. It's not the Vaidhi Bhakti that you practice to go to Vaikuntha, because that's Vaidhi Bhakti full, no? Like the one you will, I don't know, be instructed about in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. You practice in this way, and your Ishtadev is Lakshmi Narayan, and you will serve them in Vaikuntha, in Dasya Rasa, or whatever. So that's not our orientation. We are not being told that in day one, right? So in that sense, we practice Raga Bhakti. And in that sense, our deity is Radha-Krishna from day one. So again, I will say that when someone like Srila Prabhupada will say, as long as you are not, as long as there is some awe and reverence, that's Lakshmi Narayan. It has more to do with, you are worshiping Radha and Krishna, but still your approach to Radha and Krishna is, it resembles the mood that predominates in Vaikuntha, and therefore corresponds with the deity of Vaikuntha, with its Lakshmi Narayan, but also at the same time saying there is place for that in some stage of the journey when you may not be able to just jump into the shoes of the Brajavasis and, okay, from now on I will be carried by a passionate attachment to relate to Krishna in this mode or that. We cannot probably imitate that forcibly. So in the beginning, we may need some perimeter of rules, but again, it's very important to remain aware what's the purpose of the rules. Now, the rules are not there just to follow the rules. The purpose of the rules is not just follow the rules for the sake of following the rules. We have to follow the rules so they activate something inside of us. So they take us to transformation, to realization, to experience. If that's not going on, we are not following the rules with the proper attitude, with the proper understanding. That's what Rupa Goswami calls niyama-graha. One of the forms of niyama-graha means you are following all the rules, but in a way that is not bringing you to a place of deep insight and experience and realization and developing of your relationship with God and everything. So you are following the rules, but there's no fruit to that following. So you are not following them in spirit. You are just keep following the law and not the spirit of the law. So it's important that we keep that in mind. And of course, we have proper company, friendship, guidance that keep us aware of that, no, and inspire us to whatever we embrace is embraced for the right reasons, so to say. Whatever principles or commitments or vows we embrace are with a clear goal in mind, no, that we can see how all of that somehow converges into our project of serving Krishna in Vrindavan in this case. So it's a gradual transition, as you were saying, Shweta Devradika. It's not just like, okay, today I'm doing this and tomorrow I'm doing that. And I've seen devotees that very early in their practice, probably from practice in previous lives, sometimes because of certain particular guidance, they're able to connect very quickly with the mood of Vrindavan, so to say. But also at the same time, I've seen many that want to connect very quickly with the mood of Vrindavan, and that ends up being some form of sahaja, imitation thing, where they're just like thinking or wanting to be there, but it's mostly escapism, and unintegrated. They want to run to Vrindavan in an unintegrated form, so to say, with lots of pending issues and unresolved trauma and stuff that they're running from. They're not running to Vrindavan. They're running from unresolved stuff, and they have to run somewhere else. So, okay, let's run to Vrindavan. But actually, they are mostly escaping from things they have not fully integrated. And the idea is that if you want to run to Vrindavan, that running has to come from an integrated place. No? So in that sense, the following of rules, for me, following of rules is not just like a mechanical military copy paste or doing stuff, but just paying attention to what I need to integrate in this particular stage. How I can be fully human, how I can not be evasive, how I can develop a willingness to confront reality as it unfolds on a daily basis, as it presents to me, because that's Krishna himself coming and integrating all those layers. So naturally and gradually, in the context of chanting and hearing and practicing, naturally and gradually, I will be irresistibly taken in that particular direction that I call my goal. But I don't want to rush there. No, I know that there are different stances in the Gaudiya community, like with everything, but yeah, I personally feel comfortable with this idea of that our tradition, Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada himself, Srila Siddhar Maharaj, he will say, no, fools rush where angels fear to tread, right? So don't rush, become an angel, he will say. Pujala Raga Pata Gaura Vabanga, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he will say, try to worship in awe and reverence, not Radha and Krishna, but the path of Raga Bhakti, which takes you to Radha and Krishna. So that was his main spirit. Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhange. That path of Raga Bhakti, which takes to the land of Raga, of love, is to be worshipped with profound reverence. Not that we are worshiping Radha and Krishna in reverence like Lakshmi Narayan, but we are showing our reverence for the path itself. No, that we are putting that on top of our heads because we don't want to make that cheap. We don't want to take that as less than what it is. And from that safe position of appreciation, positive appreciation and longing, healthy longing, we're worshiping that, keeping it clear on top of our heads, and meanwhile working on all the stuff we need to work and integrated all the human layers we need to integrate. That's part of the Puja Laraga Pata Gaurava Bhange. And I'm trying to become a sincere, honest, authentic, integrated human being in the context of that service, because I like so much, so badly, I would like to give myself fully to Vrindavan service. I'm talking on self-loving bhakti. Things like that. No? That's what we were talking the other day in Alatra. I was talking on self-loving bhakti, and someone was like, I presented to someone, the Purva Paksha, like someone may think, what's that? Self-loving bhakti? You know, that has nothing to do with the ultimate realm of Vrindavan. Well, it has. If we are able to establish the sambandha and see the connection and the projection, the foundation. So we are building foundation here. Again, we are building foundation for the building. So it's really sustainable. And because we want so badly to reach there, we are taking our time in building a proper foundation. So our projection is realistic and sustainable. Instead of just rushing on without foundation, without proper grounding, and sometimes ruining our whole prospect in that sense, in one sense, right? So that's what comes today, Svetadvip. I don't know if somehow replies to what you were asking, or there's something pending in that connection.
No, yes, Maharaj, it was very helpful. I really loved the point. I mean, I loved what you said about having this mood of awe and reverence toward the path of Raga Bhakti. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And Srila Sri Maharaj will say, if one takes that safe stance with proper, again, veneration and appreciation and gratitude and prospect in that direction, but one is not trying to push oneself inside that realm, like ascend by my own will, but I'm trying to keep myself worshiping and appreciating. We will be dragged by force from above, he will say. No, I'm not trying to push and impose myself on that highest realm, but if I keep the proper appreciation and humility, that higher realm will take me when it's the moment, and then I will know it's true, it's real. I'm being taken. I'm not trying to enter by myself there. No, it's not a personal whim or something. No, so yeah, I think that's way more realistic and sustainable. Thank you for your question. Okay, we have 2 more raised hands, so probably with that we may conclude today. So let's go to Krishna from Alatra. You can unmute yourself. Welcome, Krishna. Nice to see you again.
Namaskar, Swamiji. Nice to see you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay, very good. Very good. Wow, what an amazing morning. I feel very
I agree.
honored.
I agree.
Yeah. Feel very honored to share and be a part of Tadatmiya Sangha today and in the future. I have so many questions.
That's how it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I had like 10 questions coming into this. I have 10 questions inside of this, and I probably will have 10 questions coming out of this. But
hopefully when I reply, you have 10 more questions after that. That's how it works. That's how it works.
That's how it works. But also how it works is, the way that the discussion has gone, has sort of clarified which question I will focus on today. So you're really helping. So we're talking about foundations, me and you are kind of dialoguing in that, establishing my, personal foundations. And you encourage me not to rush into it, and I appreciate that. And today you started talking, and you've been talking about Paramatma and Krishna. And there's some reservations I have. Like I am a believer in Krishna. To what degree, where Krishna fits into my bhakti and my devotion, that's within question, I would say. I'm just being honest to everybody out there.
Thank you.
But you really clarified something today, talking about in the first question, Krishna as this ultimate guru. And I think that's somewhere I can rest in for now. A little separate, but connected. Have you heard the Mula mantra before?
If I've heard about the expression Mula mantra,
Well, there's a Mula mantra in particular, Om Sachitananda Parabrahma Purushottama Paramatman Sri Bhagavati Sumeta Sri Bhagavate Namaha. Have you heard this one?
Yeah, but also there are other mantras which are also termed as such. So yeah,
As
these are
Mula
kind
mantra,
of
yeah.
ways of terming some particular mantras. Yeah.
Sure. I'm somewhat aware of that. Well, I wanted to ask you about this mantra, if you have any experience or knowledge about it, because it is this mantra that I've just been in love with it for a while, and I've been very attracted to it for a while. And I've been trying to, it's like when you first sing a mantra like that, you're just singing it, you like the sound of it. But then you're trying to parse the meaning of it and what the mantra is, and it just goes deeper and deeper. And so within that, there's Paramatma and there's Parabrahma, which we were kind of discussing in our email a little bit. So can you talk a little bit about those? I guess there's distinctions and also unification within them.
I mean, what do you mean by those at the end? Paramatma and Parabrahma?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There's some microphone on or no? That's okay. Thank you. So thank you for the question, Krishna Prabhu, and thank you for the honesty of your presentation and where you stand at present in your journey. Basically, that's what we are here for, just some honest bearing of our hearts, and that should be more than enough to be received in that place where we are. So in connection to the mantra you are referring, and specifically to the question you are asking, which includes the words or the names or the aspects of God, Parabrahman and Paramatma. Of course, it also mentions Sachit Ananda. It's a way of referring, of course, to the Absolute in its different, again, facets. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Sachit Ananda. Sometimes these three words, Sachit Ananda, are connected somehow with Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahma Samhita will say, of course, Ishvara, Paramakrishna, Sachidananda, Vigraha, and so on. So yeah, these are always present, the principles of existence, eternal existence, consciousness, and bliss. These are like foundational, constitutional ingredients to God's own ontology. So as I mentioned before, again, when we say Paramatma, when we say Brahman or Bhagavan or Parabrahman, we are speaking about the same supreme entity. We are not creating a fracture in the undivided wholeness of the divine. Because God is God, if the divine is all that he, she, they are, is, it has to be, again, unbroken, undivided, whole. It's very, very, again, this is foundational. Because if we are not having this in place, we become dualists. And we create different supreme people, different gods. We are not polytheistic people. We are not worshiping different gods. But especially for those who are following not only Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but some form of dharma coming from India, that's the possibility is there if we don't have proper foundation, because there are so many forms of the divine, right? Vishnu, Narayan, Brahman, Parabrahman, Bhagavan, Varahadev, Mahaprabhu, Krishna. I mean, so if we don't have very clear the unifying, underlying sameness in one sense of all those faces speaking about the same person, we can become polytheistic very easily. And I've seen that, I mean, not in polytheistic in principle, but in practice. And celebrating the appearance day of Vamandev, and then celebrating Nityananda Trayodasi, and then Janmashtami, but losing sight that we are celebrating the same person's birthday every single time, so to say. So you have to, that's something we have to check for ourselves, right? When I celebrating all these occasions or talking about them, Varahadev, Vamandev, Kurma, etc., Brahman, Paramatma, Krishna, am I internally relating all of them to the same non-dual absolute, or I'm creating all these unnecessary divisions and fragmentations, right? So going to your question, Paramatma and Parabrahman. So Paramatma, the tricky thing with Sanskrit, with the scriptures, and it's not tricky at the same time, it's beautiful, is that all of these words apply to all of them, basically. In other words, many times in scripture you read Brahman, and Brahman is talking about Krishna, not to Brahman as an impersonal side of the absolute. In some cases, it refers to the impersonal side of the absolute. In some cases, it's referred to the hyper-personalized form of Krishna, the same word. Sometimes we'll hear Paramatma or even the word Atma. Atma is a name of Krishna to begin with. Atma doesn't only refer to the soul. Atma can mean body. Atma can mean mind. Atma can mean soul. Atma can mean God. How do you know what does it mean each time the word appears? You have to analyze the rest of the context where it appears. That's how Sanskrit works a lot. Without context, you don't have an idea what you are talking about, right? So that's beautiful in itself, no? That's how Sanskrit operates. It forces you to see reality in context, no? Not to take isolated parts and define them as you think they are. You have to consider them for what is being said before, after, upside, down, behind, in front. So you have the real picture of what's actually saying. Even the order of the words in a Sanskrit verse, or I mean, it can mean so many things. So you have to have the context to know, oh, this actually means this. So that's, I'm explaining this because I will say, what's Parabrahma? What's Paramatma? Well, it depends the context. In some cases, Paramatma will refer to Krishna in his lila, the supreme soul, but sometimes Paramatma refers to this localized form of the divine in everyone's heart, or even in some cases, Paramatma, of course, it's extended. It's because sometimes we say Paramatma, a devotee will go to the colloquial meaning, the usual meaning of that. Okay, Krishna, God in the heart. But also Paramatma means God in every atom, for example. We call that more specifically Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. That's God existing in every atom. So that's, again, an extended version of what Paramatma means. Because if not, we are, okay, it's only in my heart. No, it's only in everyone else's heart. It's in every atom. Every atom is a heart, if you want to put it like that. You know, since God is everywhere, everything is a heart. So Paramatma, no? Paramatma is that localized form of God, or you could say hyper-localized, because if it's in every atom, where is he not? So Paramatma, no? And Parabrahman, again, Brahman means it's a generic way of this addressing the absolute. Brahman in Upanishadic, the main word for God in the Upanishads is Brahman. Generally, you won't find the name Krishna in the Upanishads. You will find more Brahman, Brahman, Brahman. Now, Brahman doesn't necessarily limit to the impersonal aspect of God, which is there. Again, God, the divine, to be full, it has to have also an impersonal aspect. It's not just only personal. It's not that the impersonal side is unreal or bad. No, it's there. It's eternal. And there's people who want to go there, so to say. And they can stay there forever. So we have nothing against that. It's just not our cup of tea, so to say. So Brahman means that in some cases, impersonal, non-defined, homogeneous transcendence, but also can refer to Krishna, personalized form. Because Brahman, as I think I mentioned in our exchange, interestingly, the root of the word Brahman is the Sanskrit dhatu. The root, dhatu is a root that all the Sanskrit words come from different dhatus. So Brahman comes from Brim, and Brim means to expand. So Brahman means he, if you want to put it, he or it, who is expansive by nature and who makes others become similarly expand. So that's very interesting, because if you just limit Brahman to an undifferentiated conglomerate of consciousness that seems to have no movement, no variety, no experience, but the very root of Brahman speaks about growth and expansion, that's pointing to something else, at least in my biased devotional eyes. But that's the definition of the word Brahman. And for us, again, in our tradition, we will say the full face of Brahman, and that will be Parabrahman. Para means supreme. So the supreme Brahman is supreme, but the supreme expression of Brahman, if Brahman means expansive, Parabrahman has to speak about this supremely expansiveness of the absolute, and expansiveness, growth, development, evolution has to be in terms of, in our way of thinking, in terms of loving interaction, loving experience that has more to do with the ideas of growth, expansion, evolution. Love is what brings that more and more. So we will conclude, again, I'm sharing my perspective as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, that Parabrahman is a personalized form of God that brings forth the greatest possibility of loving expansion and interaction. And for us, that's Krishna, or Mahaprabhu, which is Krishna. And Rupa Goswami makes his case in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, showing how Krishna is Rasa Vaisaha Akila Rasamrita Murti, the ultimate form of love that fully facilitates all the different nuances and experiences of love, and that tastes the different forms of love. With this, I don't want to give a sectarian statement like, so we are the best, and that's our opinion, and how we interpret Parabrahman ultimately. But of course, there is place for people in other traditions to just interpret Parabrahman as Brahman being the supreme, and taking even Brahman as an impersonal reality. There is a way to read that term in those ways. So I cannot argue for that in an absolute way. But in the Srimad Bhagavatam, our main treatise, that's how Krishna is referred to in the Brahma Vimohan Lila, where Krishna is with his friends, and after Brahma becomes bewildered, and he starts to offer prayers to Krishna. And Brahma is for the Vedas, is the wisest person on earth. And he met Krishna in the beginning of creation, and he thought he knew Krishna. But now, after this upgraded experience, he realized, okay, now I'm starting to meet. I thought I knew the absolute. Now I'm starting to know who is the actual absolute, who is the supreme absolute, the Parabrahman. He says, Ahovagyam Nanda Gopa Brajokasam Janmitram Paramanandam Purna Brahman Sanatanam. So he's saying, wow, he's praying to Krishna, and he's especially glorifying Krishna's friends, the Gopas in Vrindavan at that verse. How fortunate are all the people of Vrindavan, because they are friends with he who is Purna Brahman. Purna is complete or perfect. It's another way of saying Para. So the Bhagavatam refers to Krishna as Purna Brahman. No? He's the eternal, supreme absolute, and these guys here in the forest are his intimate friends. Wow, such a fortune. No? That's how Brahma is framing the verse. No? Like, incredible, this person who is the absolute, the supreme God, worshipped with so much pomp and reverence. In this particular case, these boys are relating to him as an intimate friend on one-to-one, like equals. So what's the nature of that love? What's the nature of that intimacy? What's the nature of that fortune? And I will argue that that speaks more about what Brahman originally means than anything else. Again, Brahman means expansive. So love and intimacy and the nature of the absolute can expand so much that you relate to him as an intimate friend. Expansiveness doesn't necessarily mean something big and externally expansive that I become paralyzed in awe. It can mean expansiveness in terms of intimacy and affection and love to the point that actually you forget that Krishna is God. That's what happens in Vrindavan. Nobody's aware that Krishna is God. They relate to him as an equal, as a village boy, of course, the most charming one. And that's another way of talking about expansiveness of Brahman, right? Like expansiveness in terms of love and affection and intimacy. And that becomes so expansive that not only everyone in Vrindavan is not aware of Krishna's godhood, Krishna himself forgets that. Krishna himself is not aware in Vrindavan, I'm God. He remains God somewhere else outside of the village. But there, no. Brahman has expanded so much in terms of love and affection that something else is happening. So that's how we, and again, I can just talk for my perspective. I cannot talk in this case for anyone else's. For us, that's how we will read this idea of what does it mean to talk about Parabrahman and Paramatma, as I mentioned also. So I hope that helps in some way, Krishna. Again, there are many ways to address these terms, as I mentioned, many ways to address these realities. This is one of them. Reality is multifaceted. It's like a multifaceted diamond. So in presenting my own perspective of my own chosen path, also I want to remain careful not to overstep and dismiss other possibilities, which may not be my own choice, but there may be someone else's choice, and there are plausible in eternity. So we should learn also to acknowledge them and respect them. And so, but again, I cannot but speak for my own particular perspective and experience. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much for your question. I appreciate it. And probably now you have 108 more questions as we anticipated. So that gives us a beautiful chance for us to have you next Saturday and so on and so forth. So thank you again. And let's go to the last question from Madhav Prabhu from India. And we'll conclude ISTAGOSTHI today with that. Conclude, quote unquote. Never concludes. Yes, Madhav.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Pranam.
Maharaj, my question is kind of related to what Yamuna Mataji had asked. So these days I'm exploring the Guru Tattva a little bit more, trying to understand the different kind of implications which are there.
Yeah.
So you replied that we don't have to fully align with Guru on every single step. Like it doesn't have to be that whatever the Guru says, we have to be aligned exactly as it is in an impersonal way. But how do we align this particular concept with the idea of guror avajna, one of the nama-aparadhas? So what does this nama-aparadha actually mean, guror avajna? Can you explain that?
Okay, thank you. So, so what Madhav Prabhu is referring is to the third nama-aparadha. There are 10 nama-aparadhas, or sometimes described as, I don't use the word offense, but aparadha means like to go against law. No? So like 10 ways to relate to the name of Krishna, which are going against how you should relate to the name of Krishna in a loving way. So the third one is guror avajna. Guror avajna, which actually means, of course, again, I don't want to sound here comes the absolute conclusive revelation. There's nothing else to say about that. But what the term says is neglecting guru. No? Guror avajna means to neglect guru. Of course, that lends itself to different interpretations. No? What does it mean to neglect guru? And again, someone may take it to the utmost degree of, if Gurudev told you, I don't know, not to marry and you married, you are neglecting guru and you are an aparadhi. And or if your Gurudev likes bananas more than mangoes, and you like mangoes more than bananas, you are neglecting your guru's taste. So that's I mean, you can go crazy if you play out the implications of this too much. So the immediate meaning of guror avajna is to neglect guru, or to neglect the principle of guru. Remember, guru means a principle also. Of course, it's represented by individuals, but there is something called guru tattva. No? So guror avajna means to dismiss that principle, like to reject the principle of divine guidance, for example, to cancel that type of channel of revelation, to consider that's not necessary. No? That will be the immediate meaning of that. No? If you read the words, and I will say that's pretty accurate, and I will say that's why it's like that, because sometimes we are talking about nama-aparadha, right? Guror avajna comes in the context of nama-aparadha. So nam is the name of Krishna, which is not different from Krishna himself. And most of us probably have started chanting the name of Krishna without having a guru, without having even any contact with guru. Some of us even have started chanting Krishna without even knowing that there's something called guru. In some cases, maybe some, like I was talking the other day with a friend of mine, and he just connected by the Radha-Krishna temple album first. So he heard the mantra, he chanted the mantra, but he didn't know about something called guru. That came after. So someone may ask, okay, one can chant the Maha Mantra without guru, but then why the guru is given the name in what we call Harinam? No, initiation sometimes. No, why the name of Krishna is given if I was already chanting before? What's the difference, right? So the point here is one of the nama-aparadhas is to neglect the principle of guru. So if you chant and you chant and you chant, naturally, if you're chanting with a proper attitude, naturally Krishna himself, who is none different from his name, will take you, will inspire you, will put you in connection with the principle of guru, with the principle of divine love personified. Let's put it like that. The goal of life is not Krishna. The goal of life is love for Krishna. And ideally, guru personifies love for Krishna in one degree or another. So Krishna will put you in love for Krishna, will put you in contact with love for Krishna in the form of guru. If you are chanting properly, Krishna will take you, as sometimes it is said, Krishna will take you to guru, guru will take you to Krishna. So my point is, if you are chanting without guru, without connection, and when I say guru, I'm not limiting it to Diksha guru, as you know. It's so wide, this concept of guru. But we are chanting on our own, let's put it like that. And the grace of the name gradually is bringing us to a form of guidance. So if when that happens, we reject that, that's a form, that's antithetical to the chanting of the name, basically. That goes against what the name, because the name itself is taking you there. The name itself, Krishna himself, is bringing you in connection to the flow of certain sadhus in your life. So if then we neglect that, cancel that, deny that, that's a way of going against the name, because the name itself is taking you there. And that's why the name is given at one point by a guru to a disciple to make this point. Okay, the name was there, but Krishna likes to give himself through his devotees also. Krishna likes to come to our lives through particular personifications of love for God. So that's why, despite we have been chanting for some time, we are receiving the name from certain person. We are receiving the blessings to continue chanting, but now receiving it from the mouth, from the lips of some person. Because the principle is Krishna likes himself. Krishna likes to give himself through the sadhus. So if we somehow say, no, we don't need that, it's another way of saying we don't need initiation, we don't need to receive the name, I continue chanting on my own. It's a way of neglecting the principle of Guru, neglecting the dynamic transmission that happens in parampara, and that you are invited to be part of. In one sense, it's neglecting personal responsibility and commitment to be part of that current. So, and you just want to look at the current flowing on the side, and you keep chanting, but I'm not jumping into the current. I'm not jumping into the waters and swimming along with that. So at the end of the day, this guror avajna is a denial of personal responsibility. No, it's a denial of, I don't want to be part of this chain of Guru disciple, to take my role in that, to represent the tradition, to learn, to go deeper into my relationship with the name, as inspired and guided by personification of that love for Krishna in the form of Guru. So that's basically the idea of guror avajna. No, that again, it has to be understood in connection with where it's appearing. It's appearing in a list that is related to the chanting of the name. So ideally, it has to be understood and applied in that sense. It doesn't mean, again, if Gurudev has some taste, some particular inclination according to his, her nature, and you have a different one, that's guror avajna. That's an over application of the term, and that can create, of course, lots of neurosis and fear and intimidation and dysfunction in the relationship. So yeah, some things need to be kept in their particular perimeter of application, and we shouldn't decontextualize them. I hope that helps, Madhav.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. It certainly does. Many things have been brought up by this, and I think a lot more will come. So I'll message you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. And again, thank you so much to all of you, as usual, for your presence and blessing me with your trust and openness and time and energy and questions and sincerity. All that is, I'm being showered on all directions. So Krishna is very generous with me, and hopefully, of course, he's with all of you as he is. And here we are all together to remain aware of such a gift, matchless gift, Srila Prabhupada will say. So let's continue embracing the nature of matchless gift that we have received. And I pranam to all of you. Looking forward to see you soon, next Saturday, same timing, same channel, same heart connection. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Shri Shri Gonitinanda Gaur Gadadhar Ju ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Radha Govinda Ji Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai, Sat Sang ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyai Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo.